like, just putting it on,
Excuse me.
the plate.
Looks good there.
Okay, so it's 3:03, and we had promised we were only going to go an hour. And unfortunately, Pat's not able to join us today. We thought she may be, but she said probably not. So that, unfortunately, was stuck with me. And for that, I sincerely apologize. Because objectively, demonstratively, she's better at this than I am. But we'll do our best. Thank goodness we're at the point we've had a lot of the presentations. And so far, you know, really it's been an education series where we've had some panel or somebody up here talking about something, and we have had some group discussion, but it's been kind of an educational thing. Today it's really all about you. And I think what I'd like to do right now is just kind of go over what our plan is for today, and then kind of next steps going forward. Number one, you have in front of you a draft white paper document, for lack of a better term, that has tried to boil down the different education sessions that we've had, encapsulate comments that have been made at roundtable discussions, comments that have been made, written on some of the sheets that we've gathered from you over the series, and try to get some ideas down, looking at the lessons learned, some potential strategies, some potential actions, and particularly focused on some of the themes that have been emerging around technical aspects, funding, policy, education, and outreach. That's kind of four main themes. So first, I'm going to give everybody a chance to kind of refamiliarize yourself with that document. Then I'm going to ask you for kind of your first reactions to it, any comments that you might have. And then we're going to break into groups to talk about on those four subtopics, figuring out what is that next key step as this group sees it, so that we can figure out kind of what our next step is for doing anything going forward. And for this group's knowledge, I do have a meeting scheduled next week with the steering committee of city managers for the Local Government Collaborative to share with them what this group says, so that they can be hearing from staff, from participants, kind of what the thoughts are out there. So with that, I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to go ahead and read through the draft document. about another minute. Okay, hopefully you've had a chance to get through that. And just wanted to hear some basic feedback, some first reactions, some identification of some things that were missed. For instance, a person who was not able to be here today emailed me an edited copy and has in a couple of places, but especially like in education outreach, we need to engage the developers and builders community from the very beginning as we're moving forward. That's going to be just critical. Another item identified that was emailed to me, and actually I was talking earlier about, is that it's well and good to talk about what are we going to do differently going forward in dealing with stormwater, but how do we deal with what's already out there, what's already in the ground? That's something that we need to be considering. What else? It's a perfect document. I'm so proud. Myself and the other editors were very pleased.
You said engage the developers and builders was one of the comments?
Yes.
I'd add in their landscapers as well.
Landscapers as well?
Okay.
Anything else?
Not this time.
Okay, that's fine.
Aaron, under the key lessons learned, I know it's mentioned in other parts of the document, but I added one just consideration of that stormwater really needs to be treated as a true utility. Being managed and resources allocated, it's a lot of times viewed. It's not viewed in the same light as a water utility and sewer utility. So I added all of this together.
Okay,
So I added that as a key lesson and to reinforce the other comments that you received on the developers piece. I also think that there is a corporate piece to this in terms of the education and outreach. I also mentioned, we talked, a lot of the presentations focused on governmental entities, and I think then we talked about developers and probably home builders, but also partnership, area chambers of commerce groups, because a lot of times these flooding events are impacting businesses many times. And so I think there needs to be some understanding of those business groups as well, of how they can be impacted both by a flooding event, but also a lot of times the rules are different for a commercial property than they are for a residential property. Their requirements are usually a little higher. So I think that's another key action is the rest of education outreach.
Have you marked that? Have you copied it?
And then the last, and I don't know if there's local engineering groups, chapters, or architecture group chapters, but I think those are two other groups that
Reach out to it.
that potentially have a presentation, a summary of what we've done.
Oh, and actually, by the way, anybody when you're speaking, make sure you talk loud, because I am running the video camera over there mostly so that I can go back and listen to it. because I will try to absorb everything now, but it's not necessarily written down, it can be hard to reconstruct. Thank you.
The last one I'll note under technical that I had too was, when you form that regional committee to review existing ordinances, I think it's really critical that you have public and private. And private, I mean developer
Developers,
groups,
builder,
homeowner groups, not just governmental entities, because if you're gonna make something that's gonna be well-rounded for the end result, I think that's gonna be a critical part. It's similar to how the code, the building code was almost done, is there's people from all aspects of it.
Essential,
I had one more, real quick, I'll be done, sorry. Under funding strategies, identify a mechanism to invest upstream. Some of that might require legislative change for cities to actually be able to spend money outside of your,
I think they commented on that a little bit in here, one of the sections, but it's important to know. And I know they talked about not enough funding or money of that, but the cities have the benefit of being able to have that stormwater utility and set those rates of what they need to accomplish some of these goals. I just don't think all of them do, or they're afraid of jacking it up a little bit.
Well, and it should be noted that the comment of current funding is insufficient, was just acknowledging that that's where we are today.
Correct.
It's not saying what the solution is, but it is something that needs to be considered and discussed. Unless you do.
a piece that's missing out of here would be rainscape retrofitting. There's a tremendous resource that ISWAP has for landscaping, for how to, and a lot of this is aimed at new development or redevelopment. An enormous percentage of the metro area is already developed and not going to change in the foreseeable future. And we want to, and there would be neither requirement nor incentive to do so. So some thread between the education and outreach to private property owners, whether residential or commercial, to do landscaping retrofits as an encouraged policy and education outreach tool. We've got, I think, half of the things on the back page here, the management tools and techniques, are applicable to land that has already been developed and won't be changing in the next 25 years. And absent redevelopment or new development, nothing's going to happen to it unless they collectively incentivize their.
So then how do we have the right policies that incentivize property owners to do some of
And
these
then
things?
education and outreach that carry that message to them of business as usual won't work, and it's not equitable to require all of the fix to be done by new development.
Yeah. So both the why do you do something, and then
Yeah, and then also the
How
what,
are we gonna do
and
it,
then
and what do you
and
do?
then we'll help you do it.
any other major kind of overarching comments or thoughts before I have us break into our subgroups? Gretchen?
I just try to think big picture and step back, and I'm not as knowledgeable as everybody in here. But in terms of what have we learned through this process, I'm wondering if somewhere in that front part, we might say that we have learned that that new approaches, practices, standards, and stormwater management are needed because of, updated engineering knowledge, greater intensity and frequency of storms, and, changes in development patterns. That part of the learning is, yes, there is a real need for modifications and in those approaches.
So some discussion along that, what we've
Or is
done.
that just too obvious?
Well, what we've talked about though, but we don't have in here, is that what we've done was done with the best knowledge that we had at the time.
This is just
And nobody's
updated
saying we
knowledge.
did something wrong, but we
Changes in
learned that.
development patterns and change in the frequency and intensity of storms, which you do have in here. All of these things have, seems like, come together to say, oh, there's a greater urgency to, you know, adapt our approaches, standards, practices, in light of those things. And a consistent approach is, you know, is beneficial. I mean, that was kind of, as I stepped back and tried to say, what did I learn out of all of this? If I were just,
Get a thread.
I would say the rate at which development has taken place has escalated, but to Jonathan's point and Matt's situation, the redevelopment piece is going to be minor in their situations because, or even new development, because there isn't a lot going on residentially in their cities. So looking back at what can be done to the existing pieces is going to be a lot more prevalent than going forward, because our development practices today in the suburbs is far beyond where it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. We're not where we need to be yet, and I think everyone would agree with that, including the developers. We're glad to be part of this process, but I think going back and looking and trying to find ways to retroactively fix the other parts of 5, that's what we talked about when they were talking about healthy soil. That's going to be a lot more impactful than the small portions that are newly developed.
Yeah, and that was really
that was
the
the point.
thrust of the comment that I received, which is we've got two different but related issues dealing with stormwater. There's the what do we do going forward, and there's the what do we do with what's already there and is not going to be redeveloped.
And we made a lot of improvements. Pretty soon it won't be the land of 10,000 lakes like Minnesota, it'll be the land of 10,000 ponds from all the stormwater prevention.
I'm really sorry to cut us off because we have a very short time
Let's
window.
go to work.
So let's get to work. Who is wanting to work? So we're going to work our way through this set of questions that you have here in front of you under policy, technical, funding, and education. I'll always get all four. They won't ever be in the same order. I'll always get them. Can I see a show of hands who wants to work on policy? I will assign people if I have to. Got 2, 3, 4, 5. Have policies come up here. What about people who would want to work on education outreach? 2, 3, 4. Can I get a couple more? 5. Okay, let's have education outreach right up here. That's a policy already, right? Funding. Got funding over back here.
You didn't give us all our options, so I don't know if I'm holding back.
Technical's the last option. I'm going to let you self-identify, but if I have to do people, I will. Doesn't mean you're on that committee. It's just trying not to have committees of 2.
Or whatever works, so.
That's technical.
So.
Can I get any volunteers for more funding?
We need somebody with deep pockets.
Good luck. You want to do funding? You're the taxpayer. Okay, I'll join you over here. I'll join you. All right. Okay, thank you. So, what I'd like you to do is, I want you to spend the next 30 minutes in your group, and within your sub-area, if we missed a critical area, please list it. You know, what are the actions most needed to move this effort forward with regards to your sub-area? Who needs to be involved? Who else should be working on this that's not here today? We need to be contacting. Who should lead it, and what else do we need to know to move this forward? What I'm going to ask each group to do is identify what is the one key next step in regards to your sub-area that needs to take place in order to move stormwater forward and do something with stormwater, whatever that may be. Identify that one step, and if you're good, who needs to be involved in it, so we can be kind of, because I'm gonna ask each of those to come up here, and if you have something you come up with that you think is just absolutely critical and it doesn't fit, let me know. I've got a general over here as well. Go.
It's easy.
Before you choose that one, you said social media. We can about, you know, not for that.
All right.
Good work for
Taking it.
the thing that is maybe not necessarily missing, but how we do it is dependent on clearly it's how we communicate is totally different.
And who we,
It's gonna be totally different. And they're all important.
Yeah.
Far better.
I don't know if we have to prioritize or
I think the bigger impact
how we manage
looking backwards, but I think so if
I thought it
we're
was
spending money updating the new developments,
one thing that came to mind is
looking
we're in a
back,
position where a lot of cities have centralized staff to a lot of
those are things we can apply.
and I think it's a really good opportunity
So those initiatives.
that city council know, but in general, I don't know that their staff know this, and it seems like the opportunity time for them, that they do think they have an open ear to say, what have our staff been learning about? So I would think we'd have an open
That's
ear.
gonna impact more on you.
Now seems like a good time to say, okay, this is what has been the main topic seizure. Obviously, you can't go too in depth, but I think it's a good time to get that messaging to in front of them.
Kind of common saying we make.
in a point where it's
What's the desire to help them in regards to sort of
we might have.
how is it? How is it? And that, I think, opens up questions out of 10%. What if we do,
Asphalt milling as far as the actual dust,
but,
but it's a little more.
but I like Mr. Doug to try to
So here's
focus.
maybe questions as we have a variety of cities here. I don't know, first thing, as you think about your city, what do you think, when you think of your community, is
Your policy,
the
sorry.
top 13 needs educated as you sit right now? No, your community is different. If you were to educate, if you were to focus on one of
You're
those
right,
right now,
sorry.
I'm going to throw one thing out. I'm glad you're here because I know we talked
I want
about
to say
the
first,
and
we also educate our
this is our today,
population.
$15 million what we could do for them. But like,
I think
that's
as much as like
my problem, anytime anybody upstream does something, or in the case of West Des Moines, does stuff downstream, causes me problems on big because when they put the levees in to protect their property, which is their today,
stuff might
that
be
causes my parking.
They hear about
A lot of the shit levees. What I've noticed now in the water basin that they've got down here in France, people might just go out there, they're pumping it over.
staff.
Everybody seems to fail something, and that is, when river's full,
Take it,
Raccoon River's full,
say like,
the water backs up.
all the information we have.
I'm at the body of the tree.
People who are actually
Everybody else coming in, everybody else doesn't
It's like the walkers, you can educate what you want. It's not, there's not words that force you to do it. Okay, so what they're supposed to do.
It's not even like, yeah, it's not even like a restriction or regulation or something like that. It's just like how do you do policies in place to get
Yeah, me as well.
hopefully you just have a conversation.
It's like, oh, it's like, couldn't we have something, you know, like having a conversation with them, or even why do I have to have this for
Usually homeowners association.
how can we deal with the water that's in our backyard? It's like, oh,
The next thing you should do,
idea that it's like a reimbursement program, whatever. That education, if nobody knows about it, it's like, I swear, we just started a reimbursement program.
As a community who is downstream.
And I don't know how to get out to people.
Having this could be in the form of a 20
Yeah.
We can just have some kind of agreement at critical points at which there's a transition between we're already programmed grade CFS, so we gotta do it now second, coming from.
I know, we're tired of seeing this, but
And you say, so like for example, we always get
question is,
If I said AJ,
Yeah.
let's say they were CFS, let's say we'll create a CFS, no higher than a certain rating.
there's gotta be a connection to
And then
So that's
the
why.
communities out there,
Whatever the heck they want to do, upstream or existing engineering, however they want to get there.
Yeah, that's,
it's completely community choice.
it relates to something that.
To stay within
Yeah,
the
sure,
area.
you're in the wet.
And if they don't stay within that, here's somebody.
Yeah, like the candy gardens, yeah, embracing that.
Exceeded that, which is on the compensate. So this is beyond like.
Yeah.
So Dave, where do you think Johnson is as far as, if you would like to see a focus on
Well,
some group within your
they
community
came up with more of this.
and getting a stormwater message to them?
I think the one area where we're not how much flow is not going to happen is that we're going to type something. When we're applied, they could be things like developers do or homeowners.
Now, that's rare though, there's the compaction unit, it's a similar.
That's the one area.
They have an agreement with education. See if they we know they're seeing. Fortunately, the guys count, but it's similar concepts, right? All these other communities, they have to have a limit. You can't say every little, we've had drainage well, you have that required, it's always a catch. We're not thinking about one of those spots. But if you maybe set a certain tier of flow, or anticipate anything above it, it's required to monitor. Again, there'd be a lot of analysis, but it kind of gets at the current.
No, so that they understand, because if you're gonna spend a reimbursement program, they're going to authorize the money.
And if they want.
They're not on board, they're not gonna say, you're gonna give away thousands of dollars to our residents to work around these things. So, if they're not on board, they're focused on developers, so that would get more stuff.
Well, that's, there's a, you have to do a whole hydraulic. I mean, the model is there, it's just a matter of agreeing to, I think that's what it was level. So like, for example, I would do, yeah. So if I say, okay.
Understand the development, give you this.
I tell our council has approved the first phase. Buyout for a portion of our park. How do I know?
to actually care to do it.
So if I know. So I
educate people.
how much flow is coming from the other
It'd be nice to get more about it. Everybody was aware. There's still people I talk to, and they're like, oh, yeah, we get something.
coming.
You've advertised it.
And I can say, okay, then I can model that and say,
Watching
okay,
those
cases
it.
of flood level.
In the city of Norwalk, we have the opposite problem.
So if I'm
People are hawkishly attentive to things going on in the city, all of our.
Or
initiatives,
buyouts.
whether it's for funding, rebate programs, or renovations, or reporting on things like this to council. What crime we are interested in.
It's targets. So say,
Trying to
our
like
CFS.
roll all this into a
taking
single,
CFS.
package of strategies moving forward, especially around national goals. We just had, let's say, a small example, like somebody wanted to put up
Because I guarantee it's downtown traffic.
attention for it, right? So we were scrambling, trying to figure out, oh, how about you find a way to put a rain garden right next to it? That would be better. There was no funding mechanism.
It's even now.
So from us or from them, we got timid about their financial options. So
And on the same side, we're not
maybe
ready.
stepping our way into these things, and like, that would have been a perfect pilot to figure out, okay, where can the money go? Scale of rebates, et cetera. That's why we're listening. Figure out intersection
So we're talking about within each of our communities, what really need to go as the first step of education? What needs to be done kind of as we leave here? What, if you were to pick council or staff or residents, which would you like to see in education focus? Which of them really needs to have some focus put on that as you think about your community?
And then maybe the city will charge everybody else to do the same thing. What do we
What's really intriguing about that is she does
stormwater is, and think that they should dictate everything that goes on with stormwater when they have sort of cool sign.
Just every community's
I mean,
Right.
there's a
And
little
then
extra
some of they already have
issues going on here, but
It's performance-based, performance-based standard.
people sticking their nose into things and they went up and about.
Yeah.
What should happen to somebody?
We have educated for years, and they might be incentivized.
They know.
So might be incentivized to develop
Where
their,
is that baseline?
they might say.
From their experience, whatever that experience might be.
Their experience of going to one seminar, and thinking, oh my gosh, the whole world's going to change. It's just not
City may.
And we all know that, everybody that's said every single one of these things knows that's.
You're all required to complete this size of
A lot of us, a lot of them are saying, I mean, that's one of them. Vastly different types of soil. We have areas where we can easily infiltrate.
Or they may do this
Water in all. And have erosion versus if you did something similar. A lot of money on something that's not. I feel like I don't want to be down. We heard about fix this. We just don't feel like people just don't understand that. I really think that's.
So you're saying like a consistent message to like across the city?
I think, well, what we need is we need to educate, probably even before the city council, we need to educate our, and what's the moment we get here, city manager and city manager. Because we get a lot of, I get a lot of questions from the city manager.
Somebody else.
I want to do this.
That's an interesting perspective in that everybody has money to apply. One thing that you don't realize is if you jump too fast into this, that's the quickest way to ruin it. Is if you really try and get everyone, kind of push them into this. Everyone's going to have to figure out their own way into it because it's not as simple as just writing things in paper. So one thing I think I heard from everyone there, I heard two things. One, city councils and leadership, and two, residents, utilizing residents as giving them the tools and making sure you have the tools. So maybe starting with the elected and the leadership side of education. How can we get this messaging to them? What do you think, as we sit down, this is our last session, what would you like to see delivered to them? What is a method to at least get the ball rolling for the elected to understand what the purpose of is, all these hours of training, of sessions in this
We did a plan like 10 years ago now, almost 10 years ago, a watershed plan, the whole community. And we identified at that time it was like $8 or $10 million of priority projects. We decided, and then we tied it all back to that plan. tell you all actually why we had to do those projects, and it was because we weren't controlling water development properly. That was the dollars and cents of it when we had to go in and fix
So
it.
there wasn't necessarily.
We finally got the council to flip. That's the message that resonated. To consider spending $3 million that we can fix this at Dan's point. The reason why is because it could be this whole area doesn't have much They got it, they liked it. It took us another 4 years actually to get our utility adopted because they didn't want to fund it until we had a major failure. But we took advantage of that and said, hey, remember we said we need to fix this? That's what that was all about.
Doing that, not just because.
I knew we made it 4 or 5 years ago.
What happens if it breaks?
Yeah, always trying to get that partial waiver of their stormwater requirements, and it was an hour-long discussion on the council, how that was not possible.
About 10 more minutes, so if you really start to hone in on what the key action item is. 10 more minutes, and I'm going to ask Deidre to have somebody report it.
Now I have 2 new council members, I gotta start.
Our council probably helps
Those are all tools.
anybody's elected officials is things that are currently for as it relates to stormwater and relate that to things we can do to help curb that in the future on renewals.
Gotta make the tide. This is happening because
Councilman Trimble, do you remember when I took you down to this and showed you and this guy was in your face yelling at you about this, X, Y, and Z? This is the things we can do on this development here to make that better. This drainage right here that's going back up to $1 million homes. That those people we get it right. And this is what the developer doesn't want to pay for it, doesn't want to do it. We need to show them this. I think that really brings our constituents. And then they also
So that's an interesting thought. It's something, I've seen that same connection. I've been working in a community and then really to address that issue, that's when you really have to. And the idea that they're probably going to be making their rounds because I think the council is following this because it's just going to be a part of this. Do you think there would be an interest for them to sit down with staff before and say, what is the tie to your community? How can we make this president really resonate? So it's not them just coming in as an outsider, maybe even having the state staff being a part of that presentation.
It's kind of an intersection versus like saying, that way they have the time to answer certain comparison. They're gonna plan to sit there for like 20 minutes in the region, to ask a lot of questions and not worry about like people that are the region has to say. So that would
workshop.
to say that we care.
And would you agree? I mean, so it's not just outsiders coming to tell you how you should engage with Senator Johnson. It's from staff, this is how we're doing it, this is the big part of it, metro-wide, this is.
sometimes you get the data in Calvin, because they won't work on their own, they won't make the connection about what he's talking about. We care and touch to the events or we're having quick presentation for those people. We're staff, taking kind of side the facts and throwing everybody. This is what we're going to talk about. Any questions? We're wrapped in bring it back. How do we take it from the engineering technology?
A thing that hits home with our neighbors is when the region gets buy-in from the developers. You know, if you have a developer standing behind you saying, that's a really good plan, you know, this is something I can stand behind, and then all the council are like.
I think it's hearing the information.
You get the developer behind you, the home builders.
Bringing it back to the elected official to say,
You know, tug their ear at certain times, and then people are like, if those people are behind you.
but mayors don't vote.
That's huge.
City council,
that's regulation.
I do, but I don't know which development. So like, this is a great idea. It costs more money.
Not always.
Says we care,
We
then
didn't know what next observation community, so that would not be good in our community.
there isn't that.
Where are you at?
Altoona.
And you had
Yeah, and it's not gone well, we still have drainage issues and that whole thing, we just spent a bunch of city money fixing some stuff.
and that's,
That would not be where I'd wanna go.
we've never had anything like that last month, so we would be coming in fresh.
And I've heard that from other communities, that exact. And that's why it's also important to say, we're not always saying it has to be, it doesn't have to be prairies everywhere. It doesn't, we're talking about designing things differently so you can treat multiple storm events. And I think that actually that'd be a good story to talk about too, is that we're talking about designing requirements differently.
5-minute warning.
Not necessarily, a conservation development is an option to achieve some of these goals and it can be incorporated, but it's not necessarily, it has to be that. Because I think that.
Yeah, that's given everybody a bad taste of the whole thing, conservation, no more of that. You know, we started like 10 years ago, we're still closed down, we're still, I don't know, the problems in Swales.
Our other one, they just tweaked it over time. The first phase was not all that.
Well, that'd be basically
They took out a big chunk. Yeah, it's been horrible experience. So that council's like, we don't want any more of that, city staffing, you know. And if they don't get the tie, they just could afford it better. And then we have front swales, like ditches in front of these houses, with culverts, and then they didn't size them right down the slope, and so then we've got to like, the water just backs up, and it's just a mess.
I need to have you come and talk to our county staff, doing a comprehensive plan, trying to throw a lot of things in there that sound really good, and we're willing to try, but I'm afraid to basically what happened in your first phase, and I don't want to go through that same learning curve. I want to learn from other communities that made mistakes.
You guys start somewhere, you're ready for the stage.
If we're going to do
That would be
something,
if I had to say
meaningful, let's do
the state, so we have to, you know, let's have something policy for the state. They've never really actually figured out. I think your policies figure out one thing that I can see is allocating money.
Any other ones like in the metro, specifically design and something that they get. Lesson learned.
Taxpayers aren't really.
But the idea, the different message that I have now is, where can we treat the water, and once you have that plan in place, then instead of looking at that on the back end, let's simply go through the process.
I'm guessing that's telling me.
Prairie, yeah,
Okay, but then there's no accountability.
But in that case, is the presentation have a meaningful conversation. It's not something that would just be.
The comparison, here's the problem neighborhood that didn't have detention, doesn't know what the problems we have with the same way because it's not there, or whatever. If we do this way in the future, this is to prevent this problem. Tie that together. The case studies of different and old development versus the new one. What we do different to make this, you know, and why it's important.
We have a few things on this now.
So where is next step? And I know the next step would be something like a work session with the city councils, with input from some representation of this collaborative group, but ultimately, local staff, everything else participated, provide that or Rick Johnson, or whatever it is, to make the information meaningful and relatable to the council. I see, would you agree that that would be a role you guys would find acceptable as people that have attended this?
Well, but if we gave, if the legislature gave us.
Another part that I kind of think just came out a little bit that I think is very important is this idea of, it's brought up regularly, but educating developers and developers. What is the venue to do that? How do we do that?
Yeah. Exactly.
Not even joking.
That sounds like a farmer's dance.
That's the most effective ones I've heard, like,
No, it's like now the cities individually relinquish, I don't know if there's budget to it.
Do a lot of cities already have these meetings going on?
They all have been talking about using meetings like this. We've actually got, I've got a meeting on my
I'm just saying,
calendar.
though,
So
is
they
that
want to talk about
cities are
our
saying,
city.
we're not all going to care. That would be how.
Do you think, get them together, I don't think it's ever going to just talk at them and present to them, but do you think we could get back and say, have some type of discussion? Would that, do you think that would be the goal, was to get a back and forth discussion?
Yeah, the only thing that they ours is coming out on presentations, people in the same room, and if there's competitors, then nobody wants to talk. So that, you gotta figure out. Start having this discussion. Because somebody will just sit and wait and let somebody talk.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to bring us all back together, so if you can just give me my lesson learned is we need more time.
What are we trying to tell them? What is the message to them? Become more educated on the practicing of the or are you trying to tell them? I mean, that's what it is.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is if you have discussions about what they're going to do, what their thoughts are on this conservation.
Yeah, because it's dependent upon.
One thing I want to say, yeah, I'll totally do that, and the other one will be like, if they're doing that, it's going to cost them more money, so maybe I could not do it, and then try to take out, maybe jump them, and I don't know.
There's something I've heard is that from the developers, they go, when they get funded for these things, I mean, they don't go to school, they're gonna go ask their consulting engineers, and these consulting engineers are the ones that say, no, that's gonna be expensive. So could you have a meeting where they bring some of their consulting engineers that they work with now? They're all there to get, you're now talking to their engineers, and they're there to listen. And the engineers might be willing to talk about, well, we can't design like that, and then you can follow the manager those with technical responses, where there's these tools available.
Our meeting to developers, I think, is going to be in regards to.
We're lucky.
And I was presentation, talking about that kind of thing. Maybe corner some of them and talk about some water plan, field, try to, I don't know, who are, see, but once we walk out, who's going to run it?
I think it's of the districts, the WMAs, and I think there's an expectation and how to at least carry this forward to get out at least one time and make a round to everybody. And
Really sorry.
that's kind of where we're trying to function out. What does everyone want to see happen right now? And then we'll have to talk to the districts, urban commons.
So I'm going to bring everybody back together.
Who does everyone want to accomplish, and then we're going to figure out.
My lesson learned is an hour's not enough time.
The district is
So we try to get better each time, continuous improvement. Or at least I try to get a little bit better each time. So what I'm gonna do is gonna subject you to my terrible handwriting and spelling. And I'm gonna start here with, where's my education group, over here? Is that right? All right, I never go in the same order, so I can never remember where they are. And ask each group for somebody to tell me kind of, what is that first key next step, and who needs to be involved, who needs to lead it? Does somebody over here have some thoughts, and then if we have, well, we probably won't have time, but any other thoughts that you have, make sure that I get them so that I can get them disseminated, okay?
Yep, one of our agreed upon education outreach goals is city managers, city council, elected officials, and really the next step, one of the next steps is taking the information that's been discussed in this and giving that to them, presenting it to them. But the more we talked about it, one of the keys is not just having this outsider coming and presenting to the council, but the idea of it needs to be a work session. Ideally, you would meet with staff that have been attending all these sessions beforehand and talk about what does this really mean to X community? What is the tie? What are the local issues that the council's aware of that this stuff relates to? So you're not just coming and talking about stormwater, but you're talking about stormwater and how this relates to some things that they've been seeing. Some of many cities have that disgruntled group of people that you want to help, and how this stormwater connects to that individual community. And that presentation should not just be from DMAC or the facilitators of this, but it should be a partnership between those that have attended this.
With the staff, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And very much adopting that approach of, we're not telling you that everyone has to do this on this issue.
Yep.
It's what does it mean for your community, and how should we approach it within our jurisdiction? Is that what you're saying?
And having some of that conversation before you were in front of the council, so it's specific for that community. It's not the same in every community back.
So there's not just some general outreach thing.
Yep.
Is that what your group identified as kind of the key next step?
That's the one we talked the most about. Another one that was just brought up was, of course, working with developers and home builders. But again, what does that really mean? A big part of that is, it's a difficult thing. How do you really have that conversation piece? And a lot of it has more to do with home builders or developers and their consulting engineers. And if you can get them in a room together where you're saying, we're not saying you have to change everything, we're really saying there's new methods to design these things different, that we got to make sure those consulting engineers are aware of, because if they're not trained in it or if they're not familiar with it, they're not going to be comfortable.
Did your group have any discussion about having those conversations with the developers, home builders, consulting engineers, and then having them part of this group that goes to the councils?
It was brought up.
Yeah, we had talked about having developers standing behind us saying, yes, this is a great idea, because they're really the ones that the council are going to listen to. But we didn't, the facilitator didn't give us enough time to figure out how to do that.
They need time management.
Funny enough, this morning DMAC hosted a emerging leaders class, and the topic was time management. And we had people show up late for time management. Thank you. Policy, here. Kim ran away.
Kim left her notes, however.
She ran away.
Well, we kept going back to, and we had a great group, but we kept going back to education, because we have to secure the buy-in, and the case still has to be made that, kind of a watershed approach is needed, and that we need to do something that allows flexibility for individual communities, but gets to performance standards. So we kept coming back as, first steps are really those education, and a broader sharing of the case to all of the councils, not just the mayors, but the councils. And we also felt it would be great to have developers be part of that, because although some of them have participated through this process, not all, clearly, not even enough. So we kind of went to education in terms of a policy, which needs to happen most. We, talked about there are different ways that we could get to agreement among communities on, what are their performance standards going to be, relating to how much cubic feet per second they are going to release their downstream communities at critical junctures, that might be, a way to begin thinking of it from a performance basis. So we thought from a policy standpoint, that might be a model one model to consider. And in making it happen, we agreed, elected officials and as well as developers. We need to do a lot more of that than we have so far. But I think the way you put it was, you have to secure the region saying, we care about this, and we care enough to.
So if I was to summarize, as a first policy step would be, find agreement amongst cities as to desired outcomes and performance standards, not involve elected officials and developers. But before you can even do this, this is going to happen.
The region has to say we care.
Yeah.
The region.
Before you
To
can.
say we
Region or state
care.
has to say they care.
That's the number one step, which kind of went back to
And
what
there
you
has to be
worked
a
on.
source to pay for it too, because
I haven't gotten there yet. That group back there's got solved. Don't worry about it.
Actually, we had good policy on these. All our ideas were work for your team.
Well, let's skip to your group
That's
then.
okay.
We'll skip over these. We'll skip over those guys. Make them wait. So.
I have all the great notes, so I guess I get to talk.
She's gonna stand up.
I'll give you this. Then
Oh, you can write, I'll just talk.
no, yours will get implemented because we'll be able to read it.
Okay, so one of the critical near-term steps we thought of was right-sizing the stormwater utility fee. And the funny thing is, our group said, we actually kind of need a series like we did with this one for the communities to basically sort of talk through this as a group, because one of the things we know is that we're tight, on money, and we need more, but we don't want too much, and we need maybe a study to figure out how much could so much achieve for us, and then as well as we need to educate the public on buy-in for what that would look like to do those kinds of things. So that's kind of a big step that would get us a little closer with some of the funding. We also talked about a few others, real critical actions, such as Chapter 26, we need some changes to that so we can have a deployment of revenue in novel ways. So what we really mean is you can't pay a developer to do some big increases in stormwater on their property that they maybe weren't going to do, even if it's going to protect your people downstream, because cities are prohibited from doing that. So maybe if we could make those changes, we would have that funding stream to say, hey, for $100,000 you make this so much better for us.
Make it regional,
Yep.
more regional.
So we can, a lot of that really comes down to being more regional, so that we
So if
can-
we invest $100,000 up here, we don't have to invest $1 million down here.
Right.
Is that the thought?
and we when a project is happening, such as a developer's doing something, we give them a little money to make it better, as opposed to us having to go through the process to bid it out.
So the developers got so much that they have to do anyway, but by incentivizing doing something in addition, that then provides a wider benefit.
We talked about the connection fee district, which I think we talked about before, where it's not exactly legal if we're requiring it. But then we also talked about a fee in lieu of, so we can really put that infrastructure where it's needed most, so that we don't have to just put it where we are. We can put it upstream or over here or over there. And of course that takes, when we really look at how do we do this, a lot of this goes back to the policy table, because there's some policy things that need to change, and then all of a sudden funding streams that we already have, or we can make better use of the funds we have. We need some technical people to help determine some of the fee values of different things. There's some economics people. So our table was really good at giving away all the work to the rest of you, just so you know. And let's see. I think that was, what else did I miss?
So who should be involved with this?
All the cities,
Who?
each one.
No, who at the city?
Who it, well, it's gonna fall upon me and a few other policymakers.
The similar group to what we have here?
Administration and the council.
Yeah, so the administration and council.
Yeah. It has to start at the top to direct the technical people to do what's needed to be done.
Some of the legislative things that need to be done though, that needs to be directed by council and the city manager's office to get the lobbyists in place to get them to do what we need to do.
Did you get that?
Legislative changes,
Through
changes to chapter 26.
who should do it, council?
I underline council.
I think that's it, and
Who leads that?
Huh?
That was one of the questions. Who leads it?
yeah.
And she popped up with Crossroads, of course, among others, to try to make that happen.
Depending on which it is, we have a lot of different things that kind of need to be led from multiple angles
And
at once.
if you look at that thing, I mean, it's at the very end, it kind of suggests, is it the MPO policy committee? Is it Crossroads? Is it some other group that?
And then the last one was who else do we need to, or what else do we need to know to move it forward? Of course, that's based on all the legal hurdles that'll come up.
Yeah.
From the funding group, if you guys had to choose one of those items to get working on after this, which, do you have a group, item collectively you would say we'd like this focused on first? That's what Everest.
We did discuss that. The one thing that we thought was the most important was, and to do next, is right sizing the stormwater utility fees, because it's 100% local.
Okay.
Requires no
And
outside.
I'm already 5 minutes over time, so let me go to technical.
I'm sorry, we have to make an idea.
No, again, lesson learned on me. The facilitator, you're not giving enough time. Technical. Rod, are you in charge?
Yeah, I guess kind of sort of. One of the things for the near-term action steps, we were talking about, we need something to attain more consistency and attaining accountability after for post-construction. I mean, right now, we certainly all have guidelines in place for during construction, and obviously we need consistency across the metro on that too. But it's more post-construction, everything ranging from a single-family backyard to commercial. I mean, who's looking over that? Who's measuring? Who's making sure it's working afterwards? I mean, I always drop down to the lowest one there, the single-family homeowner that just bought the property and have no idea that their yard is a flowage easement or a retention area, and what am I supposed to do, and how do I do it, and how do I afford it?
So what is the action step to attain more consistency across?
Just, and part of that, it kind of jumps into the next one, what needs to happen. If there's not something already in place, some kind of, survey matrix, something, just to see what are we all doing, and cover that whole gamut of, from single family up through commercial. I know in our community, I'm not really involved in the commercial end of it as far as the design and the review of the site plan. I'm more in the building of it, but I hear so many times where someone doesn't want a corporate entity comes in, they don't want to cross a line, because if they cross that certain line on what they want to add on or redevelop, then they've got to deal with all the stormwater. And so then they back off of that just so they don't have to.
So in creating this matrix of current requirements, would that help to move towards attaining more consistency?
It would, just knowing what the other person's doing and how are they doing.
Which would then also potentially help and inform, if there are changes to be made, we can see what they are on the road.
Right, or it's even make a difference, or it just sounds good on paper.
You look like you're going to say something.
We also have, getting that committee, that first action step that you'll have already got on there. Maybe that committee helps create that matrix, or maybe it already exists.
Does that consist of technical staff, do you think?
I think it should consist of a variety, so that we get it all, of what standards we may come up with or modify. The people that maintain, that build, landscapers, engineers, otherwise, developers.
Okay. So I've got basically, convened committee of various staff to create this matrix, which would then move towards helping maintain more consistency. But of the items that we have, which is the very first key next step that this group feels should be taken And I'm gonna take all of this to the city manager's committee next week, and say, this is kind of what your staff is thinking, this is what they're seeing as the next key step. What do you think? Get
Still
there.
vote for one of ours, that's right sizing those stormwater fees and making sure everybody has a utility. Among other things, but that's one of them.
What do you mean by right sizing, just so I understand?
The stormwater fee, I mean, I know from all the different studies, there's communities that have implemented stormwater utilities throughout the nation, and they've just collected the money, done nothing with them, and then there's ones that have put one in, and they keep the dollar amount so low, all they're doing is paying for administrative staff, they're not getting anything done in the community. So you need something that's gonna handle the CIP that you need realistically, and be able to pay for it over time, whatever it takes.
So I guess, are you saying that regionally, or are you saying that in each city?
All the individual cities should,
Because I think regionally that'd be a tough sell.
yeah, it's individual.
Yeah,
It
we're-
starts at home, I think.
But even if that's the first step, then how does each city, what does each city do with that? They don't have a policy in place for what they're gonna use that water, they don't have a strategy, they don't have the technical side. What are they gonna do with that money when they have it? And, you know, the other pieces it all has to interlock with each other.
That was this table.
Yeah.
We were just on the funding piece.
Yeah, your point is before you generate the financial stream, you know what you're gonna do.
Yeah,
Is that kind of-
I think so.
Education outreach policymakers, here has to be the first step.
Yeah,
Part of the task of right-sizing your stormwater utility fee is determining what's the appropriate level of protection to offer to properties within our jurisdictions, and what's the gap between what we presently offer. You know, it's probably in most communities, it's a shotgun blast, and we've got neighborhoods with, 2-year protection, and we need to get them to 100-year, with the safe overflow for the events.
You have to have that information, but then you have to have the policy to back up what you're gonna do.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, none of this goes away.
Yeah.
This is kind of where do we start?
It's a
And
partnership.
We might know the full kind of big picture, but it's one of my favorite phrases, you can't boil the ocean. And so where do you start? And this is an ocean, both metaphorically and literally. I want to thank everybody for being here. I've kept you over time. I'm sorry. It's failure on my part. That would have been perfectly, but that's the mistake that you
Salary anyway.
today. But I am going to take, if anybody has that document where you made notes on it, or anything like that, please give it to me so that I can make any sort of edits. I want to send that out to the group to look at and say, did I capture this accurately? Because I'm going to then take that to the city managers group for their review, as well as the discussion that we had here today. And maybe then communicating back out to the full group, say, okay, folks, here's the direction that we're being told. Who's going to raise their hand to start working on some of these things? Who do we need to be connecting with that we haven't connected with at this point that we've got to have there if this is going to have any legs and any legitimacy? And I don't know who said it over here, somebody, I think it was you, Brian, about wanting, when you're presenting to the council, wanting developers behind you nodding their heads. I think that is a point well taken. Because, regardless of how we got here, we're all going to be in this together. So we've got a shared issue. We need to find a shared solution we all agree upon. Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate it.
Hey, before you guys discuss the education,
Way to go, Kim. Staying out all night.
Scott,